let's jump back into our topic to complete our series, our three-part series on the occult philosophy of Thelema. We've been talking about this topic over the last 2 weeks, and we're going to complete it here today. Now, last week, we ended discussing and reading the one-page document, the Thelema Manifesto. It is referred to as the Manifesto of Thelema, which has the boiled down concrescence, the alchemical distillation, if you will, of the entire Thelemic philosophy, the entire occult philosophy of Thelema, distilled down to a one-page document. However, it still required some significant decoding to understand some of the things that Crowley speaks about in this one-page work. So let's jump back over to it. And we had read through the beginning quotes and decoded some of them last week. And then, we went into the preamble and explained to people what that meant, that the phrase, "there is no God but man," not meaning that man is God, meaning, however, that there is no small g God, creator of the human experience, except capital M man, meaning humankind. Humanity itself is the actual creator of the human condition and experience because of what we think, how we feel, and how we behave. Our consciousness is creating the shared reality that we all, as a species, then must live in together as a human civilization. And then we went on to read the Manifesto of Human Rights that are talked about in this document, Liber Oz, that man has the right to live the way that he wishes to live, not to violate the rights of others, but to live, to work, to play, to rest, and die as he will. And again, the term will meaning connection to the higher will of creation, not according to the selfish will and whims of the individual. Because if you live that way, you aren't free. That is what exactly creates enslavement if you live according to your base selfish desires. What leads to higher consciousness and freedom is when you live according to the will of creation itself, the will with a capital W. So again, some of the words require a little bit of decoding in the document to understand what they really mean and what Crowley was really trying to say about humanity's rights. And then in the second part, it's physical. Man has the right to eat, drink, what he will, dwell where he will, move as he will on the face of the earth. So this is what you will put into your body, where you will live, and your right to travel freely. The third paragraph is the mind and creative powers. We have the right to think what we will, speak what we will, write what we will, and then create in endless other ways as we wish to do. And people do not have the right to block that creativity and speech, etc. Paragraph number 4 is about sexuality and the right to love others as we wish, as long as it is a mutually voluntary and consensual relationship and mutual and voluntarily consensual acts. This means that you cannot restrict, how people will express their sexuality, period, as long as it is voluntary and it is not done involuntarily or upon children who do not have the capacity to make informed decisions regarding that until they reach adulthood, or at least past the age of puberty and enter adulthood. Different cultures have put a different number on that over the years, but it's certainly not when the individual is still in childhood. I think common sense obviously must be applied there. And, generally in our culture, we use the figure 18 years of age. However, there could be very immature people at 18 and, possibly, slightly younger than that. They could be more mature. But in general, we're talking about adults who have reached the age of reason and consent fully and gone through pubescence, etc. And that is, what we're talking about there, not to just freely do whatever you want, no matter what the age or mindset of the individual is, and or, anything like that, or involuntarily. So that is freedom of sexual expression in paragraph 4. And then in paragraph 5, the all-important phrase that hits people like a sledgehammer when it comes to liberaz is, man has the right to kill those who would thwart these rights. And we ended last week talking about that sentence. And it's a hard and bitter pill for most people to swallow, because most people are weak-minded, led like sheep to the slaughter lemmings that haven't one morsel of courage in their entire personality makeup. And they don't even have the ability to get angry regarding how much their rights have been violated and raped and taken away from them by people who have zero right to do it. They've been turned into domesticated. I don't even want to use the word animals, because you want to know why? It's an insult to every animal life form on the entire planet to call people who I'm referring to, who have no courage to defend their rights, who would not lift a finger to do anything to an attacker of human rights, to people who are violent individuals already, doing violence actively. Not talking about doing violence, actively engaged in violence against others and their rights. Because that's what we have today. We have the state of duress and violence when it comes to human rights. And once again, when we talk about this phrase, I ended last week saying that it's such an extremity of thought regarding that this is definitively our right, that Crowley did not even word it in present tense language. So note that, right? When you're reading this, you have to note every word choice. He said, man has the right, and I shouldn't have to say this, folks, but some people get hung up on gender terms, and I should not even have to express this, but the word man in this sentence does not mean a man like male gender. It means humanity. It means mankind. This was the parlance of the time. The word man was used to represent all of humanity. Okay, you could look at that as sexist or, gender specific or however you want. I personally don't care about that kind of woke language personally. To me, I understand what it means, and I just read it that way, and that's the end of it, So we're not talking about gender male. We're talking about all of humanity is what the word man means in that sentence. Once again, I don't even feel I should have to clarify that, but some people get a little bit confused and don't understand what is meant by that. So please be aware that's what he's referring to, definitely, zero doubt about it. So humanity has the right, every individual, read the word man as every single individual possesses the right to kill those who would thwart their rights. Now, notice that's future tense. It's not present tense. It doesn't mean even that you're actively doing it. He's saying if you're actively thwarting other people's rights, yes, you've definitely forfeit your right to live, and other people would have the right to take your life from you and kill you. But he's taking it a step further in this document, and he's saying every individual has the right to kill those who would thwart their rights, meaning if they've made their intent to remove other people's rights public by speaking it aloud and then not retracting that threat of violence, then that is non-protected speech. And the person is saying, I want to take away your rights by acts of violence, or I want other people to take away your rights by acts of violence. And therefore, they have forfeit their own right to life. Now, once again, that's heavy. That's hardcore. That is something most people never even think about, that right exists. That is a human right. Now, once again, so few people in the world understand that right. The right to kill when one is taking your rights or is even advocating the taking of your rights. They are saying you should be enslaved. You don't deserve freedom. You don't deserve to exercise your rights. I am agreeing, concurring with, and condoning other people's violent behavior to take away your rights. Imagine that. So let's look at black slavery in the southern colonies, in the southern states during the Civil War era. Southern colonies and then into the southern states. You know, just as a quick aside, I'm going to get into this topic a little bit here. As a quick aside, I just briefly reread the original Declaration of Independence with all of the struck clauses. Most people would not even have that accessible or even know where to get it. But you can find online and in other books the original writings of Jefferson with all of the phrases that were struck by the Second Continental Congress before the Declaration of Independence was signed. And he just goes in on the practice of black slavery in the southern colonies. I mean, he tears it apart. People saying that Jefferson wanted slavery do not understand at all the circumstances under which he protested slavery in his life, helped with Ben Franklin to form the first anti-slavery coalition right here in Philadelphia, in early America, and have never looked at his writings on the topic. He calls it the adjective is execrable, which means it's born of shit. It is a practice born of shit. It's dirty. It's disgusting. Okay. And that's what he refers to it as in the struck clauses. Those clauses were struck by the southern colony. They insisted upon being struck, I should say, by the southern colonies. They all walked out of the Continental Congress together. And they were the people who had the money to prosecute the war, the Revolutionary War. The northern states knew they would not be able to prosecute that war against the British without them. And therefore, they did make the deal with that devil to put that issue aside and strike the anti-slavery clauses in the original wording of the Declaration of Independence in order to keep the southern colonies in with the signing of American independence. Most people know nothing about that. They've never read anything about it. They don't know the real history about it. And then they buy into the cultural Marxist bullshit of, Jefferson was just a rich white slave owner who was vindictive against slaves, etc., when nothing like that was actually the case. He wanted to end the practice. And literally when you were given by, when you inherited slavery, when you inherited slaves from a plantation that your family owned, you were literally not allowed to release them. It was against the law, and you could be jailed or killed if you said, I want these people who were held as slaves to be free. So again, what Jefferson did was simply allow them to live on and work the land at his plantation and did not treat them as other slave owners did, and worked tirelessly to try to abolish the practice of slavery. And, again, he eventually did capitulate and agree to strike those sentences from the original declaration, because without it, they wouldn't have American independence. And the northern colonists agreed, we'll fight that battle another time. That being said, I just want to say, imagine if a black slave living in colonial America or early America escapes a plantation and is around all people who are saying, how dare you remove yourself as property from your owner's land, and agree that that being should be held as a slave, treated as a slave, worked like a slave, and has no right to extricate himself from that absolute violence and abomination of a situation. Do you think that slave would have the right to take the lives of people who would say to him or her, you are property, rightfully, and I'm going to possibly hunt you down, or round up others who will hunt you down, or tell others where you are at so they can go and hunt you down and take you back into captivity? I mean, imagine this. Imagine this. See, people don't even sit and just think about that this occurred over and over and over and over again. And no one would think that the slave would have the right to kill. They'd have the right to kill every single individual that dared to even say that they're someone's rightful slave. And you know what? Government is really no different than that. Now, once again, let me qualify this. I am recognizing the existence of the right and explaining that that right exists in nature. I'm not saying that it's a good idea to currently go about exercising that right in the open for a number of reasons. One, we have to educate the population that that right even exists. They're so fucking dumb. They believe slavery is perfectly acceptable in the form of government, because the word government has been euphemized to such an extent. Other people believe it's just normal behavior, and everybody has the right to go and form governments and hold people under them. They don't understand that government is slavery. That's how dumb they are. That's how in a state of refusal to look at reality of what government really is, that they are. So you have an ignorant population, and that means you have an immoral population. No moral population is ignorant. In order for there to be an immoral population, there must be widespread ignorance in the population. A truly good and moral population is not ignorant. They are intelligent, holistically intelligent about what is going on in the world, about the self, about human consciousness, about human behavior, and especially about human rights. And therefore, I am not advocating an immediate course of action regarding that. I am simply trying to get my viewership to understand this is, in fact, in nature, definitively and truly a human right. And if someone acts upon that, they have not committed a wrongdoing. This is what people who are trying to continuously hold people in a state of slavery and mind control are trying to get other people to believe, which isn't true. But once again, there is a difference between understanding simply that the right does exist and deciding to take a course of action regarding that behavior, which probably would not be wise given the time that we are living in. Now, if we were living in a time where every single person understood this right, humanity was essentially free, and some sick, deranged individual was trying to become a tyrant and saying, you know what, we need to put people back under the slavery of government, what people would just do is take out a rifle, put a bullet in his head, and be done with it. That would be the end of it. That would be the end of the tyrant. Done. One and done. And then what's for lunch? You know? And I mean coldly, just like that. But unfortunately, we don't live in that time. Unfortunately, we live in a time when we have just totally stupid, dumb motherfuckers around us regarding what human rights are. They believe government has a perfect right to exist and is perfectly morally legitimate when it is not. When it is a set of commands of compliance dictated by people who believe that they are God over others. believe that they have the right to set rules. They have the right to set commands into effect that they call laws, and other people have a moral obligation to follow and obey those laws, whether they are things that restrict rights or not, whether they are things that tell you you can't do something that you do have the right to do. See, this document as a manifesto is saying no one is God. However, everyone together, based upon their knowledge of rights, creates the experience that all then must live within. And it's explaining what people have a right to do when people want to cling on to that corpse and refuse to listen to the voice of wisdom and acknowledge what rights are and what they are not. And that is this phrase right here. Once again, most people don't even want to consider it. They don't even want to think about it. And then all you have to do to know what humanity currently does have the right to do is simply think about the concept. What have the controllers done to humanity thus far? What have the totally corrupt governments of the world in every single country done? What types of laws have they made? What types of restrictions upon rights have they made? They've told you your earnings are not your own, and you must turn over earnings to them to spend as they see fit. They've told you you must have licensure for just about everything that you do, things that are human rights, to do with your own property. And they would say, you need to come and beg us for our consent to allow you to do those things. They've even restricted your own body, saying you can't put certain substances into your own vehicle of consciousness. We'll decide what's done with that body. We'll decide what substances are allowed in it and may never be put into it. And that is a direct claim of ownership upon you. As a matter of fact, all of those things are direct claims of ownership upon you. Because if someone claims ownership upon the fruit of your labor, they are indirectly claiming ownership upon your body, because your body was the vehicle that was used to perform that labor and therefore acquire the fruits of that labor. Therefore, if someone says the fruits of your labor belong to me, that's a claim of ownership upon your body. And what is the claim of ownership upon your body called? Slavery. So if you believe in the right to tax others, you believe in slavery. Sorry, yes, that's true. No, it isn't untrue. Yes, it is true. That's definitively true. It's not my thought about it. It's not my conceptualization about it. It's not my opinion about it. It's definitively, factually, objectively true. The end. Whether you accept it, believe it or not. Tough shit if you don't. It's still true. That is point of fact reality in nature. That if someone makes the claim upon the fruits of your labor, they make the claim upon your body. That's fucking slavery. And if you believe that someone has the right to do that, you believe in slavery. You believe that slavery should be instituted, and you believe that slavery should continue. And that makes you a fucking immoral piece of dirt and a total fucking loser, quite frankly. If you believe someone has the right to say, to do this behavior that isn't harming anybody else, you must come to me and beg me for a license for it. Well, that's a claim of slavery. That's a claim of ownership. Because then I'm making a claim upon your rights to perform a behavior that does not harm another being. That's what a right is. And if I say you need my permission to do that, I'm telling you I own your rights. That those are your actions and your behaviors. And if I'm the owner of your actions and your behaviors, by definition, I'm the owner of your body. Do you see how that works philosophically? You could make all the justifications of it that you want, which means trying to make the right to tax, trying to make the right to license, trying to make the right to prohibit taking substances into one's body. You could try to justify, which means try to make them into a right, when in fact, those are wrongdoings. Those are things that humanity doesn't have a right to do. Do you have a right to tell someone you need a license to do a behavior individually? No, you don't. What individual does? No individual does. Therefore, that can't be given to anybody else by people who don't have it individually. You cannot delegate a right that you don't possess as an individual. And people believe you do because they're under mind control. They're under dark occult mind control. Licensure is the same thing, and so is prohibition. Do I have the right to tell you what you can and can't put into your own body? No. Why don't I? I don't have that right because I don't own your body. You own your body. You're the owner of your physical vehicle for your consciousness called your body. If I have the right to tell you what you can or can't put into your body, by definition, I am making a claim upon your body. I'm saying your body doesn't actually belong to you. I can define what is allowed to be put into it and what you may never put into it. And therefore, I'm making a claim of ownership upon your physical body. I don't understand how people cannot see laws like this way. That's slavery, ladies and gentlemen. And it doesn't matter whether you think it is slavery. It actually and definitively is slavery in the natural world, in the real world. You can justify it, try to turn a wrong into a right, try to turn violence into a right, try to turn coercion and duress into a right all you want. Those things are never rights. Those things are the violation of rights. And this statement is the be-all and end-all of all spirituality in the 3D. Let me say that again. This statement is the be-all and end-all of all spirituality in the 3D. According to my understanding of spirituality, I am going to say that this is the most divinely inspired sentence ever written by a human being in all of human history, and probably there never will be a higher consciousness sentence ever penned by a human hand. And if you don't think so, you're still asleep and you don't understand what spirituality is. Now that's a hard fucking pill to swallow. But guess what? It's still true. It's still true. And this is the level of understanding when it comes to rights that we need to get to as a species before anything's going to change here on Earth. For anyone to doubt that sentence up there, if you doubt that sentence, if you don't think it's definitively true in the real world of nature, okay, you're the problem. You're the problem of what's going on in humanity. That you are contributing to the base consciousness, you are contributing to the continued condoning of slavery, and you are part of holding humanity back in awareness and consciousness, and you are standing in the way of cosmic judgment, of cosmic justice. And you are bringing cosmic judgment to humanity by not pushing your consciousness forward enough and expanding it enough to fully understand that sentence right there. And really to understand Thelema, period. And this is why the controllers and the dark occultists don't want you looking into this philosophy at all. They want this as hidden as natural law because, in essence, it explains in very human terms the essence of natural law. And they don't want anybody understanding that. They want you in total ignorance so you remain a fucking willful slave. And you never rebel against your master's totally violent behavior against you. And their sick fucking mind-controlled attack dogs called the police and military that are the people who hold the system of slavery in place as dirty, rotten, trash, Nazi order followers. You scumbag pigs. Each and every one of you are just trash, bad fucking people. And you don't understand it. You don't think that you are. You believe you have the rights that your masters have told you you have. You have no such fucking thing. You have no such thing in the real world. All you have is a set of mind-controlled beliefs, and you're totally conditioned like a Pavlovian fucking dog. And that's why they call you their dogs. That's why they put occult symbols all over your fucking body. That's why they give you dog tags around your neck, because you're their fucking trained fucking dogs, and you're trained fucking monkeys. You're trained fucking apes. That's all you are. And they have nothing but contempt for you. Let me tell you. I've tried to explain it many times to people. The occultists, they're just using you like a fucking dumbass tool. And then they're going to throw you the fuck away. You know, once you can't do the job to the extent that a tool once did it, what do you do with the tool? You take the tool and you throw it in the fucking garbage. And that's all they're going to do to you. And you think you're special? You think you're privileged? You think you have some fucking rights that other people don't? Boy, you're a little sack of fucking dog shit. Dumb as a bag of fucking sand, you know? Dumb as a sack full of fucking sand. And then people like that think they're courageous too. They think they have any intelligence and any courage. They're trash with nothing of the kind. Cut from the same cloth as the dirty fucking communist secret police. Cut from the same cloth as the dirty, rotten fucking Nazi pieces of trash of the Third Reich. Absolute fucking human vermin. And the people who support them and the people who insist they have the rights that they have, you're cut from the same cloth as them. And this is where it's all ultimately heading, folks, is people have to understand nobody has the right to command others. Nobody has the right to steal from others. Nobody has the right to curtail other people's rights. And that's all government is and does. That's all it is. That's all it does. It's violence. It's violent behavior. And then it's the condoning of violent behavior by the people who vote. By the people who go out and support politicians, by the people who don't understand their rights. You're destroying human freedom for yourself even. But worse, you're destroying it for people that actually want their freedom intact. And you have no right to do that. That's why Crowley is explaining man has the right to kill not only those who are actively thwarting his rights, man has the right to kill those who would thwart his rights. Think about it, ladies and gentlemen. You got to meditate on this. Not even meditate. Wrong word. I apologize. I'm sorry I hit my steel straw there. You have to contemplate this for hours. You have to sit and contemplate it. Contemplative thought means that you're using imagination and a form of active meditation called daydreaming combined to consider an idea while in an active state of mind. It's a semi-active state of mind that the imagination is employed to utilize. And then there's a semi-meditative quality that you're in as well. You're combining those two. So you have concentration, imagination, and meditation combined to form contemplation. That means coming together in the middle, in the temple of the mind, the temple where the brain is at, okay? And if you contemplate, if you ponder this sentence in a contemplative mindset, you will understand what it truly means. You will understand this is truly a right. You will understand that anybody trying to take your rights away from you is claiming to be God, because your rights didn't come from another human being. Your rights didn't come from a group of human beings. Your rights came from the creator of the entire universe, and no being in the 3D domain has the right to curtail or take your rights away from you. It's not that hard to understand. The problem is most people don't want to understand it because they're just fucking cowards. And they don't want to understand how far we've gone into duress, how far we've gone into the destruction of human freedom, and what may be the sacrifice required to get us out of that state, to get us out of that human condition of slavery. It may take physical combat. It may take another war of rebellion against tyranny. And people don't want to understand that because they're cowards. They're the type of cowards who never would have stood up to Hitler. They're the type of cowards who never would have stood up to Mao. They're the type of cowards that never would have stood up to Stalin or Lenin or Trotsky or the Bolsheviks, etc. They would have never done anything to stop the Nazis. They would have, and you still have people who think that these were the good guys. You still have this psyop. Look, we got to get into more psyops on the show. There's a couple of things that have to be done before this season concludes in June. I have to get into other psyops to show people the things that people believe. They are so fucking retardedly dumb to even entertain these notions. Look, even if you want to entertain them, I'm not telling you just dismiss them without looking into them. You need to look into the claim, and then from a historical perspective, you have to understand how ridiculous the claim is by really studying the true history, not what just they're teaching in schools. You got to go into possible alternative historical accounts. You have to go into what you might consider true scholarly historical accounts that aren't even taught in school. How many schools teach the struck clauses of the original Declaration of Independence? I went to a Jesuit high school, okay? And they taught you real American history. And let me tell you something, even they didn't teach the struck clauses of the Declaration of Independence. They didn't even teach you the surrounding circumstances of why John Adams and Ben Franklin went to Thomas Jefferson and said, we got to fight this battle another time and you need to strike these clauses. You know, we agree with you. We think it's just an abomination against God that you do. Just of an abomination against God that you do. The practice of slavery in the southern colonies. But they said without the support of these rich southern colonists who are going to walk out unless we make that an issue for another time, we're going to lose the war that's before us. That could be a war that's before us at a later time in our history as a country. But for now, we got to fight the one that's before us with England. They didn't even teach us those considerations in the Jesuit high school that I attended, which I consider gives one a great classical style education. Or at least they did at the time. I don't know how much factors like that have changed in Jesuit schooling. Hopefully they haven't much. I would hope that they haven't, but who knows? Certainly the public education is in a state of disaster in, postmodernism and, woke agenda mindset. But to go back to this, you have to understand that this is simply a right in nature, and I'm not suggesting it as an immediate course of action. Before anyone exercises this right, they need to understand it as a right to begin with. And you need to understand that we are being actively held in a state of duress and violence. Duress is the perpetual threat of violence, meaning you are being threatened with violence if you don't comply in perpetuity in time. That's duress, and that's what we are in. That's what government holds anyone under their alleged jurisdiction. That's the state that they hold them in, a state of perpetual duress, which is a continued threat of violence if you do not comply. Is that a right? Do you have a right to hold someone else in a continuous threat of violent action against them if they don't comply to your will? No, you don't. That's sorcery in and of itself by definition. Telling someone that you're going to subjugate your will to my will. That's me telling you I'm God. Imagine that. See, you know what people never do? They never put themselves in the position of what's being done to them. That is what you've been conditioned to do. You've never been conditioned to say, let me just think about it with the roles switched around. What if I made this claim as an individual? Picture if Mark Passio said to another person, before you put that substance into your body, you will have to come and beg me for my approval to allow you to do it. And if you do it without that approval, I'm coming and I'm going to restrict your freedom of movement. You will not be allowed to leave a confined space that I set up for you if you put that substance into your body. So think about yourself making that command against someone else. Just imagine you saying that violently to another person. Imagine you violently saying to another person, when your paycheck comes in this week, I'm going to be given a third of it. And if you don't, then I'm going to come to your house and I'm going to do violent things to you. If you don't agree that I rightfully have the right to take a third of your paycheck from you. As an individual, I'm going to take that. I don't give a fuck whether you agree or not. And I'm going to do what I think should be done in society with that third of your money. Regardless of whether you agree with those things or not, I've come to the conclusion that that's the best course of action, and I'm going to put that money toward the implementation of that action, whether you agree with it or not, because I know better than you. And therefore, I'm simply going to command that you give me that third, and I'm going to use it for what I see fit to do with it, regardless of whether you agree that that's the best course of action or even a good course of action. Imagine if you said that to another individual and then said if they don't comply, you're going to do violence to them. You're going to come and find them and do violence to them. Imagine that. Someone else would have a right to just take a handgun, hold it to your temple, pull the trigger, and blow your fucking brains out the side of your fucking skull. And you know that that is what they would have the right to do. And if you wouldn't agree they would have the right to do that, you're fucked up and there's something fucking wrong with you. If you believe you have the right to conduct such violence. So then the question becomes, if you don't have that right, who does? Do other people have that right? Do other individuals have that right? If no one has the right, and that's the correct answer, no one has that right. Can any of those people who don't have that right come together and all agree, we're going to give that right to Tom, Joe, Bob, and Richie, and they're going to be able to go out and conduct all that fucking violence against other people? Could they grant it to 4 or 5 guys? No. Could they grant it to 100 people? No. You can't grant to other people what you don't have inherently as a right. I don't understand what's so complicated about fucking understanding that. But people are just fucking dunces. They're just dunces. You're just dumb, son. You're just dumb. That's all it really comes down to with people who don't understand that. You just have low consciousness. You have low IQ. You have just low fucking vibratory energy being emitted from your consciousness. And that's it. You're in thrall. You're under mind control. They put you in a fucking trance. If you don't get that by now, you're still in a mind control trance, which is called thrall. You're in the state of thrall. Look it up. Look, as a matter of fact, let's do this right now, right? Because I've talked about the word thrall, but we should actually grab a definitive definition of the word, okay? So I'm going to pause here, leave that up there, and I'm going to go over to, give me a moment, because I want to do some things on the fly like this during this show. I don't do enough of that, and I'm going to do a couple things like that today. So let's look up the definition of the word thrall. And I don't really care what source comes back. We'll just see what the internet throws back at us. All right. So let's go back to the laptop. Let's put this full screen. All right. So I'll make this completely full screen here. All right. So thrall, definition and meaning from the Merriam-Webster dictionary. It's the first result that came back. A state of servitude or submission, usually used with in thrall to his emotions. B, a state of complete absorption, usually used with the preposition in. Mountains could hold me in thrall with a subtle attraction of their own. 2, an enslaved person who performs the duties of a servant, a serf, a person in moral or mental servitude. Okay, that's probably the best out of that series of definitions. It is a state of servitude, and it could be a person being held in moral or mental servitude. I think those are pretty good definitions, actually, of the word thrall. When you're in moral and mental servitude, it means you're not exercising your conscience. It means you believe what other people are telling you regarding what right and wrong is. And that makes you, whether directly or indirectly, an order follower. You're not learning what the objective difference between right and wrong behavior is, and then you're not exercising those rights. You're just accepting that from other people. Let's go back to the presentation. So if you don't understand, and let me put this in windowed mode. If you don't understand that this statement on the screen definitively and objectively is one of the rights of humanity, you're in thrall. You've been conditioned by the mind controllers of our world to believe that the right to kill, when your rights are being oppressed like that, doesn't exist. And by definition, what that means is you have been conditioned mentally in the state of thrall to believe that slavery of a being and a whole species of beings is perfectly morally acceptable and justifiable. That is what you believe in your own mind and heart, whether you will word with your lips, whether you will actually make the statement with your mouth that is what you believe, that's what you believe. And what that makes anybody who believes in that is an absolute immoral individual. You are an immoral person, a bad person, a piece of trash as a human being. And that's true, definitively. Whether you think so or not, I'm correct regarding that set of statements, and if you don't agree with it, you're just factually wrong. That's all there is to it. You're just factually wrong. And you need to get your fucking head right. You need to get it out from up your ass, and you need to understand philosophically what was just said to you. Go back and watch it again and again and again and again and again if you have to. And this is what we need to get to. We need to get to this level of understanding, and then we need to build the courage as a people to say, we're not going to live as fucking slaves. We have more self-respect for that. We're not going to condone slavery of ourselves. We're not going to condone slavery of others, and we're going to extricate ourselves from that immoral condition by any means necessary. Any means necessary. Philosophical, mental, spiritual, and if necessary, physically, to give the time to learn the mental and spiritual understanding of it. See, that's what the American Revolution did. It bought us 250 years or so of time. That's what it did. It didn't succeed long term, but it bought us the time to succeed long term. If we have to undergo another hot physical rebellion against tyranny, and the handwriting on the wall suggests we're absolutely going to have to do it as a species, as a people, that will not be the ultimate answer. That will be a stepping stone to get us to the point where we do it the true long-term way, which is in human consciousness. And it's really an integral understanding of heart-based intelligence, to know what your rights are as a being, and then to extend the understanding of sovereignty to all other living beings and not go against their rights as beings. See, that's not even so much intellectual. That's heart-based. That's agape. That's true love. That's the wider form of love that we have to develop in our own selves and ultimately propagate through the species. And this could sound like a bestial, animalistic statement, but no, it is not. I assure you, this is the highest expression of love that exists. Understanding this. Because if you would be willing to kill someone who is thwarting your own and or someone else's rights, is that an act of hatred, or is that an act of love? Is that an act of love for that being's rights as an individual, as a sovereign being? Is that the love for that being's freedom? Is that the love for that being's potentiality as a being? You're damn right it is. It absolutely is. That is what agape is and means. And that would be an ultimate expression of it, especially if you may have to give of your life in taking lives in order to do that. We have to stop thinking of this form of killing as something that is morally wrong. It is not. It is a right with a capital R. And it is something that you hope never has to be done. But unfortunately, when you're moving into more and more tyrannical time periods, you have to keep that always on the table as an option. And never, ever think that you don't have the right to engage in that right. That right exists and can never be taken away, just as your other rights are. And once again, you would not be doing harm to another individual. You would not be initiating harm. You would be doing harm, causing harm. That's why I've changed in all of my definitions of right, initiating harm. See, it all matters who started the violence. If you're responding to violence and you cause harm to the initiator of a violent behavior, you are acting within your rights and you have not done something that is violent. If someone comes up to you and says, give me half of the money of the paycheck that you worked for last week, and they say, if you don't do that, I'm going to conduct harm upon your body, and you take a baseball bat and crack them in the temple with it and kill them, you haven't committed a wrongdoing. I'm sorry, but you have to understand that that statement is true. It's an act of sheer brutality and harm, but the right exists to do it regardless of what man's law would tell you. That right exists in nature. As brutal and as terrible as that act is to think about, the right to do it exists, and you would not be doing violence by doing it. You would have been responding to violence. Now, it's your option if you want to try to talk the person down from that position. But guess what? When somebody's so fucked up that they would just come to you and make that statement that you're going to do that or I'm going to conduct violence to you, and that's all government, you already know that they're in such a fucked up psychopathic mindset that they aren't going to listen to reason. As soon as somebody has shown you, I'm this kind of person, they aren't interested in listening to reason. They're a violent being. Not by their nature, of course, but by whatever circumstances put them into that mentality. And if they're already willing to act on that, you have a right to stop them physically. Period. The end. That's just the truth. And we have to start examining that from a philosophical point of view to simply understand that that is a right. We aren't even there mentally yet, let alone at a deep heart-based intelligence level or at a true inward core spirituality level of the understanding of this statement. We have to get humanity just to an intellectual understanding of it first. And they're not even close to being there. Which is why I'm saying simply immediately going out and acting upon it would be counterproductive. It would still be within your rights, but it would be counterproductive at the time we are living in. I think we have to move consciousness forward to such a great understanding. Sorry, I backed up there accidentally. That we do not have to go to war physically to do that. See, that's what I've been trying to avert the whole time with what on earth is happening, is to get it done in consciousness so it doesn't have to be done in forceful physical rebellion. Because once again, all you're doing with forceful physical rebellion is you're extending the time that you have to teach it at a mental and spiritual level. But you are not solving it because you're simply beating back the violent oppressor, but without actually going through the educational process of educating people as to why that oppressor was committing violence by their acts and that you had the right to physically stop them by deadly force. How many people after the American Revolution did not understand those rights? How many people after the American Revolution thought that the colonists who waged that rebellion against the crown were in the wrong. And how dare they do that to the crown? How dare they do that to our royalty? Imagine, that's how dumb people were back then. That's how dumb people still are today. And the only way we're going to reverse that is to educate the population at large. Is it a tall task? Does it seem insurmountable? Does it almost seem impossible? Yes, yes, and yes. Can it be done if enough will is applied? Yes, it can. You have to accept and even believe. That may be the one act of faith that is required. Is it possible? It is. What is required? Look at the requirements for making that situation, that state of mentality happen, manifest in the world. We have to get up off of our ass. We have to apply our will. You got to learn some technical skill sets. This is the method of expression in the modern world, putting out information on the internet. If you don't know how to do that, you're part of the problem. You're not part of the solution. That's why I teach how to become the true media 6 months out of the year now, and then put information out 6 months out of the year. Because the teaching of how to do that is so important. I need to split my time between it. And guess what? It actually makes me feel better because I know I'm getting other people up to that level of competence. And then I could take the reins off and go do it. You don't need me anymore. You got this. That's what I've been about since day one. I'm not interested in having a bunch of people be followers of me. First of all, that's fucking creepy, and I don't want people around me who are like that. Okay? Not interested. When you get clingy like that, you fucking creep me out. All right? I want you to know what I know, and I want you to help me do this task by you becoming a teacher. See, I'm not in it for followers. I'm here to create other teachers of this information. That's what I've been here since day one. Some people have finally mentally gotten that, and now they're putting their will behind becoming another teacher. And some people still don't fucking get it. They still don't understand. They pat me on the back. I'm not interested in your thanks. I'm not interested in your thanks. I'm not interested in you patting on me on the back, telling me I do a good job. I don't really care. All I want is for people to understand this information and put it out to others in a free and wide way. That means learning the technological skill sets that enable you to do that. If you already have them, wonderful. Go do it. If you don't have them, make the effort to start learning. The longer you wait, the longer you can't do it. The quicker you get on to that task of learning how to do it, the quicker you're going to be able to do that job of putting this information out into the world for others. So I'm not going to get too much more into reading Thelemic texts. What I'm going to do is show you how to acquire them. This way you can read whichever ones you want. At your discretion, at your choice. But this is a pretty cool promotional flyer, one-page flyer that I found online when I was looking for images regarding related to Thelema. And I think it does, as a flyer, which you only have a limited amount of space, I think it does an excellent job at conveying the essence of the philosophy very concisely. So I wanted to read this and pick apart a little bit of the symbolism. It says at the top, of course, the Thelemic dictum of do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Again, we talked about that not meaning do whatever you want, but meaning align your behavior to the behavior of the higher will of creation, and then you'll be doing your true purpose in life, your true will. Thelema, the law of liberty. Now, once again, in teaching natural law, I have what is called the law of freedom. This is what Thelema is teaching people. The more moral one becomes, and then the more moral the aggregate of society becomes, that leads to freedom. That leads to true liberty. And that is what Thelema is. It is teaching you that unless you're on that path in life, you're not contributing to human freedom. You're contributing to the opposite, to the closing down of freedom. You're standing in the way of cosmic justice. Cosmic justice wants the freedom of all beings. It does not want slavery. God hates slavery. God hates cowardice. God hates willful ignorance. Yes, there are things that the creator of the universe does want to see put into effect, because why would it put all of the laws of the universe into effect, create beings that it sets on an evolutionary biological course, and then eventually to an evolutionary spiritual course once it gets it up to the level where the biology can support the philosophical understanding of things like rights and freedom, and the importance of those things when it comes to true evolutionary progress of the soul in consciousness. See, this is what the Rosicrucian tradition teaches. See, again, another thing that I think I need to really delve into, like early on in What on Earth is Happening, or maybe not so early on, like halfway through, we really went into Freemasonry in depth. We really went into Tarot in depth. We really went into Kabbalah in depth. Now I'm going into Thelema in a little bit of depth, not drastic depth, but just to whet the appetite of the potential student. I think I really am going to have to get into Rosicrucianism and Theosophy. I think this will complete the exploration of the most prominent and important schools of occult philosophical thought. And if I don't do that, I'd be negligent. So I think that, maybe before this season is done, more on occult philosophies, the occult philosophy of Rosicrucianism, the occult philosophy of Theosophy. And another thing we have to cover is psyops, more in depth, individual psyops, like, the Hitler is the good guy psyop, the Nazis were actually the good guys. The flat earth psyop has to be discussed at some point. I really dread even doing it because I know the backlash of the religious cult that's going to come, that I'm going to have to fucking deal with, because that's what it is. It's a religious cult. That they may not accept that, but that's exactly what they are. It's a CIA created cult. And they don't even understand that. They don't even understand that their masters gave them a religion to cling on to, like fucking dunces, that makes the entire freedom movement look like a fucking sack of shit. And they've reeled them in on the fucking hook with this psyop. And there's many others. There's many other psyops. Again, the founding fathers as the bad, evil, white, rich slave owners that don't really care about human rights. That's a psyop. These are all cultural, some of these are cultural Marxist psyops to get you to believe things that make you feel totally demoralized about your origins, the origins of America. And, we got to delve into these. So psyops and other occult traditions will probably round out this season of What on Earth is Happening. And I may throw in a few other topics, a couple, but really, what do we have? Less than 7 weeks left, something like that. So I really have to get to those things, psyops and Rosicrucianism and Theosophy, without a doubt. So continuing here on this poster, Thelema is the law of liberty. Again, that is what love is the law means. Love is agape love, which leads to higher expressions of consciousness, which means higher levels of individuation, higher evolutionary progress in consciousness, and of course, higher levels of freedom and potentiality as beings. So then it goes on to ask, and secondly, you see the pillars, the pillar of Yakin and Boaz. They reversed them from the traditional Freemasonic positions because Freemasonry puts the white pillar on the left, the Yakin pillar. On that white pillar on the right here, they write the word Thelema, which means will, as we talked about a couple of weeks ago. And then on the left-hand pillar, the dark pillar, which would be traditionally the pillar of Boaz in Freemasonry, they write the word in Greek agape, which means love. And they are one and the same. They come together in unison, in sacred union. The masculine force of Thelema, the feminine force of agape. And that is where the two pillars of enlightenment. You have the non-aggression principle and the self-defense principle. You have the yin and the yang energies. We've covered this when we talked about human consciousness, when we explored Freemasonry as an occult tradition, etc. But then it goes on inside this document, this flyer, to say, is Thelema a religion? Is it a philosophy? Is it a collection of mystical practices? Because we talked about Thelema has practices involved in it to quiet the mind, to get in touch with the intuition, to get in touch with what they refer to as the holy guardian angel, that could then help to set you upon the path that you're really supposed to be on in life, to help freedom to manifest and to help the true will of creation to manifest in our lives. So is it those things? Is it a religion? I personally don't like to look at it as a religion. Some people do. I think that's, taking it a little bit too far. I consider it a philosophy. That's why I worded on these 3 shows, these 3 podcasts, the occult philosophy of Thelema, right? Is it a collection of mystical is it a philosophy? That's how I see it. Is it a collection of mystical practices? There are practices involved. We got into them a little bit, mostly meditative practices, yogic practices. And again, it's really to quiet the mind. Thelema teaches for you to hear the voice of creation that they see as that's your guardian angel speaking to you, right? For you to be able to hear it, you got to get the junk that's constantly cycling in the mind and yapping away. You got to get that out. Or you don't have to get it permanently purged, right? No one's saying you have to have a permanently quieted mind, right? Okay, God knows my mind gets chattery all the time, right? But you have to be able in a learning and teaching moment to be able to suppress it, quote, silence it. Because it's just like trying to listen to somebody doing a radio broadcast or a podcast like this, and you have a bunch of loud music playing. You're not going to really be able to focus in on and hear what's being said. You need concentration for that. You need to really listen. And if the mind is going, blah, 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 oh, he just said this and this and this, and I got to think about that. You're not even really listening. You're not present. And you know what, folks? This is one of the things, again, part of the practices of Thelema and there's many, many techniques, and you don't even have to do it from a Thelemic perspective. You can learn these techniques in other traditions. But the more and more I realize the ignorance of human beings and where they have sticking points in learning, it's almost like humanity has a very bad learning disability, and I'm realizing this is a commonality, and we have to do something about this. Maybe this might be the last show, or maybe I'll do this next, right? Maybe this would be a good idea to set up the shows on PSYOP so people can really listen, to set up the other shows on occult tradition so they can really, really listen. Because what I'm finding more and more in studying the human condition and interacting with people is people can't truly learn because they're not truly present mentally. See, this is part of, in occultism and in spirituality, that is referred to as present moment awareness. And I think I might have to do an entire show on what true present moment awareness is. Now, we did this before, okay? But I think I have to revisit it. Present moment awareness revisited. Maybe that's next week's show. I'll think about it and decide what I want to do. But you have to be able to prevent the noise of the mind from distraction of what you're really trying to learn. Because if you don't do that, you're not truly present and you haven't opened up yourself as a vessel for learning. In other words, if I have a bunch of liquid in this glass, right, I can't fill it really with a new liquid. Okay? This isn't quite filled to the top, but it's filled most of the way, right? So if I wanted to fill it up completely with something else, I would first have to empty the glass. And part of the problem with teaching something, and even things that could be somewhat complex, is most people are dealing with a full glass already. They haven't learned to drain the glass first. You could drain it, put it in storage, it'll still be there. All those thoughts will still be yapping around 24 hours from now, I promise you. But if you don't learn the techniques to say, now it's time for an empty glass, and this chatter must be silenced for a time. You don't have to do it forever. But if you don't have the technique to silence it for a time, learning becomes impossible. It becomes a chore and it becomes a disability. The chatter is actually enabling a disability. And I think this is one of the biggest problems in people's ability to learn. I think that the people who come back to me and say, Mark, I couldn't hear you before, something forced them to take the chatter of the mind down, at least to a certain volume and level of activity, where then they could hear my voice and they could hear the voice of other voices of reason. And that still hasn't happened in most people's lives. They're so rooted in one way of thinking, and they're so rooted in that constant babble of the mind that they have no frame of reference for quieting it. They have no technique for doing that. And when you don't have a technique and a frame of reference for doing that, you're in a very, very, very poor position to learn anything. It doesn't matter what it is. If you want to learn history, you're in a poor position to learn that when you can't quiet the mind. If you want to learn mathematics, you're in a poor position to learn that. If you want to learn true occult philosophy, you're in a poor position to do that. If you want to learn technology, you're in a poor position to do that. This is, I think, one of the roots of people's general learning disabilities. And I think I'd be doing a disservice to people by not teaching some of the methods that I learned and used and are absolutely a part of a practice such as Thelema, a part of a philosophy such as Thelema. It contains these practices, as is involved in many other practices. You could learn EFT, and it's a form of this. You could learn transcendental meditation, and it's a form of this. You could learn yoga, many different styles of it, and it's a form of quieting the mind. It empties the vessel to the extent and turns the volume down such that you can hear the voice of the teacher, and you could then be filled with that information and knowledge. Okay, so again, when this is what we're talking about when they say, is Thelema a collection of mystical practices? Well, that's not the entirety of what it is, but yes, it contains those, right? So it says, is it a system of postmodern ethics? And again, don't see that as postmodernism. It's a symbol of ethics that in the modern time, people have not understood. So in that sense, yes, it is that system of ethics. It's a system of morality, just like Freemasonry is. Okay? Decide that for yourself by studying it. And that's what the whole series, this whole 3-part series, has been trying to whet the student's appetite to do. I'm telling you, yes, it is all of these things. I've studied it from a deep perspective. It has informed, challenged, and enriched my life in ways that I didn't think were even possible, especially back in the early days of my depression after being in Satanism for so long. When I understood this philosophy, it radically transformed my mind and behavior and my entire worldview. And it can do, as part of an integral approach to occult sciences, it can do the same for you. And that's what I'm saying. Decide that for yourself. If you want to study it further in depth, this has been a primer, these 3 episodes, and then I could show you how to get some of the seminal written material on these topics and many others. So it says in quotes here, I'm not really sure who the quote, it could be from Crowley, it could be their quote. It says, there is a religion in Thelema for those that require it. There is also freedom from religion in Thelema for those that require it. You see that? So you can make this a form of a religion that can get you to what we talked about weeks ago, that Queen's Chamber in the Great Pyramid, in that allegory of life that the Great Pyramid represents symbolically. So if you want to get to that place where you can understand the moral implications of it almost accidentally by simply taking this knowledge into yourself, you can use it as a religion. Personally, I wouldn't invite you to do as such. I would invite you to look at it as a higher level occult philosophy from which you can really understand morality if you study it deeply enough. If you study it cursorily, forget it. You're not going to get value out of it. You have to study it super in depth if you really want to gain the maximum value from it. Just like taking my seminar, How to Become the True Medium, right? If you just watch what I show you in class and you go, oh, that's nice. Oh, yeah, it's interesting what he did there. you're not gaining the maximum benefit and value. You have to practice it. You have to do that. You have to watch it and say, I'm now going to do that on my own. And I'm going to do that until I've mastered it and it's become second nature. And I could do it easily. Barely thinking about it. It's become an unconscious competence where I'm doing it and I'm so good at it, I don't even need to consciously think about it while I do it. I just do it. Okay? There's power in that, but what does it require? It doesn't just require focus. It requires action. This is always the missing ingredient in people's lives, is simply doing it. Don't talk about it. Don't mentally say, oh, I saw that. Oh, I got that. You don't got it. You got it when you've done it. Over and over and over and over and fucking over again. That's how you master anything that is worthwhile doing. So we're not just teaching the physical mechanics of doing a podcast like this. It's life lessons like that are taught in the seminar. Life lessons that most people never got, sadly. They never got them in life, right? I never got most of them in life by my parents, by people who were around me when I was young. I had to go to other mentors who were strangers, who performed the labor of love by talking about these things and then by writing them down or by putting them into a lecture or putting them into a video. And that was agape. That was them sharing through their care what they had learned and putting it out there for others in whatever form of media they happen to do that through. This is what Thelema can help you to understand needs to be done. Then it says, we can tell you that's the pathway. You then have to walk it. You have to go out into the world and walk that path of will, of action. You see, that's what it's all about. So continuing here, there is religion in Thelema for those that require it. But for those that do not require religion, there is freedom from religion in Thelema. It can go both ways. It can cut in both directions. The goal of Thelema, and yes, there is a goal. No practice, no occult tradition or order or society is goalless. If it's goalless, why bother to do anything? Just lay in bed all fucking day. You need to set goals. And then you need to practically try to carry out and manifest those goals in the very real physical domain. Because it's all one thing. The spiritual and the physical are all one. There's no separation. There's no real separation. Us being taught that there's separation there is a falsity and a trap. There is no separation between the spiritual and physical domains. You don't want to become too overly thinking one is has primacy over the other. Once you do that, it's a trap. You could get in a spiritual trap that way. You can get into a materialistic trap that way. They have to be seen as one thing. So the goal of Thelema is to help you realize your true will. The innermost spark of divinity inside you that holds your life's purpose. Powerful, powerful statement. And this is what Thelema helped me to do. And some other teachers helped me to realize what I had to go out there and do. And now I'm living a purpose-driven life and have been. As much as I say, I'm bitter over it, I hate it, that I have to do this, I have to give up my life, I am on my true will, the path of my true will. And there is a level of acceptance in that, and there's a level of the ego saying, I don't want to have to be doing this. My true will could be more creativity instead of teaching spirituality. I would prefer that. I consider myself a very creative person. I like music. I love art. I love creativity in all expressions. I try to employ my creativity in the teaching of this stuff. That's how I extract a little bit of what I want to do, right? So the aesthetics that I put into all of this, I would probably get much better at doing that if I could turn my time over to it. if I didn't have to fully teach this all the time. But because so many people remain ignorant of natural law, and there's still so much violence and the condoning of violence and duress in the world, and we haven't stopped the form of slavery known as government. This is what I have to do instead of turn my will over to my creative pursuits. So I integrate some of my creative pursuits into it at a small level, not at the level I would want to. But anyway, that's what the goal of Thelema is, to help you realize your true will, which is the innermost spark of divinity that dwells inside of you, which holds your life's purpose, that you can discover and then enact in the world. On your own terms, it says here in the flyer continuing, in your own unique way. This is on my terms, in my own unique way. That's what on earth is happening is. Bowing down to nobody in the process, because as I said, we are all sovereign beings. This is a tradition that respects the sovereignty of others. In the statement below, the winged disc of Maat there from the Egyptian/Cometian tradition, the goddess who represents natural law. That's why it's on the Lex Rex t-shirt in conjunction with the Justice Tarot card. The winged disc of Maat represents natural law in the Cometian tradition. And then, of course, again, the respect for sovereignty embodied in the phrase, every man and woman is a star. The star traditionally being the archetypal symbol of sovereignty, of the sovereign being, of the spirit, of the soul. Every number is infinite. There is no difference. This is the combination of forms that the physical universe represents. There is no difference between the physical and the spiritual. It is all a construct of the mind of the Creator. And ultimately, it is one thing. It is pure potentiality and pure consciousness. And that's what generally that statement represents. Again, Crowley loves numerology and inserting number into the philosophy. It does it over and over again, endlessly, throughout the Thelemic teachings. And then finally, the document ends with the second half of do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love under will, which we broke down last week. That agape is doing the true will. That's true higher level love. And we have to put love as the foundation underneath anything that we do in the world. Even as part of our true will, it has to be based in agape, the agape form of love as the foundation. Then, of course, the document contains the two other symbols that I've used in the presentation thus far. The Order of the Silver Stars sigil or seal, which is there on the left. That was Crowley's Thelemic order called Argentum Astrum. Argentum Astrum in Latin means the silver star. The seven-pointed star representing the septenary, the seven chakras, the seven planetary bodies that can be seen with the eye. The seven aspects of the trivium and the quadrivium. The methods of the trivium and quadrivium, and many other septenaries. There on the left, and on the right-hand side, a variant in the Thelemic tradition of the traditional symbol of the all-seeing eye of the Creator of the universe, with light emitting from it, which represents truth. And he inserted the eye of Ra or Horus in here, which is basically solar symbolism as well. So that's the symbol of the all-seeing eye there on the right, which people still don't understand as a positive symbol, not a negative one. To attribute that to the dark occultists is actually wrong. The problem is it represents the Creator of the universe, but the dark occultists want to usurp the place of the Creator of the universe, and they want to be God. And that is why they're trying to use that as we're God, meaning the dark occultists. So we need to take that symbol back and understand it from its true original intent and meaning as an archetypal symbol of the ever-watchful and all-seeing eye of the Creator of the universe and the laws of the Creator of the universe. So, brilliant flyer. Whoever made it, I think, has a very firm understanding. Well done. I'm not sure who the author of this flyer is, but it would definitely convey the real meaning of Thelema there in a short amount of space, in a small amount of space. I am going to recommend for the student that wants to go further into readings and understandings of Thelema, the collection of Thelemic documents known as the Holy Books of Thelema. Now, again, people will be put off by, oh, it's holy, it's sacred. Crowley did sort of try to set up Thelema as more of a religion, which is why I don't really follow Crowley. If you want to get in this to be a Crowleyite, go right ahead. Dumb idea, as far as I'm concerned. Okay? However, you can look at Thelema from a purely philosophical point of view and read Crowley's writings from that point of view. And then you have to understand, oh, some of it's really inspired and some of it's really egotistical. Can you read and be able to pick apart through discernment which is which? Do you know when Crowley's really in the spirit and he's really writing high-level philosophical thoughts? Do you know when he may be in a drug-induced state and writing a bunch of nonsense that is all egotistical to him, for him? This is what Thelema forces you to do. It forces you to exercise judgment and discernment, which is absolutely critical in any spiritual practice. So I think this is probably what most people would need, is the tomes called the Holy Books of Thelema, which I believe is in a 5-volume set. I think I have a copy of all 5 volumes in one book, a paperback version. But you would want to look for these, and I'll show you how to go about getting them today, digitally. You could, of course, buy them in any online book store. But here's the other important, really important in my estimation, texts, what I would call seminal texts of the Thelemic philosophy. Of course, the Book of the Law, which began the philosophy/religion in earnest, when Crowley is said to have received these from his holy guardian angel, these words. So you could look at this as channeled writing, or simply, writing that came out of Crowley's subconscious mind. However you want to look at that, the Book of Law is obviously essential. It is about what I would call natural law, real freedom, how to go about obtaining that state, how to get into your true will, how to quiet the mind so you could hear the guidance of what Crowley called our guardian angels, what I would simply say, the voice of truth, wisdom, and reason. And then another great book, which is a collection of letters by Crowley and other writings, Magic Without Tears, where Crowley really gets into talking about the Thelemic philosophy. Instead of the original writings of it, he actually discusses meaning of the philosophy in here. And then another great book, which is lesser known, that I think is a great book for people just coming into the Thelemic philosophy, is called The Heart of the Master, which is really a great book that helps people to conceptualize what the true will is and the path toward that, and what real freedom is versus the restriction of freedom. It's contained in this book, The Heart of the Master. I think it's one of Crowley's best writings. Most people don't even know about it, but I think it's a really great one. It's a short one, too. It's not very long. That being said, let's close up this 3-part series and then go to your calls, or we will in a moment. This won't be the last slide. I have one more after this, or 2 really, but closing the exploration of the Thelemic philosophy with a quote from Crowley himself. "The absolute rule of the state shall be a function of the absolute liberty of each individual will." Which means each individual will, setting itself on the path of the true will or not, will be the function that determines the course of human freedom. Let me say that again. So you notice he's using individual will, lowercase w, and true. That's what it means here. The absolute rule of the state shall be a function of the absolute liberty of each individual will. Because you have to turn your lowercase w will over to creation, to its higher case w will Thelema will, not what I want to do, what I want to be done. And if you do that at an individual level, and then the aggregate of society makes a choice whether to do that process of stepping into the true higher will or not, that is what actually determines the level of freedom of the aggregate of the society. And Crowley worded it as the absolute rule of the state. Will the state rule entirely and there will be slavery if we do not turn our individual will over to the higher will? Or will we do that and set ourselves on our true path of the true will of creation, by which we will reduce the rule of the state and gain true freedom in life? This is the law of freedom in Crowley's words, not in mine. Okay? I word it as the law of freedom is that as morality increases, freedom increases. Morality is going to be determined by if we get on the true path or not. And that means action, will, thelema. Not knowing it, doing it. It's not about what you know up here. It's not even about what you holistically have as holistic heart-based intelligence. You can have all of those forms of intelligence firing and operating on both cylinders, making a connection between the head and the heart all day, every day, all you want, and nothing will change unless you take right action through courage. The guts have to be the third part of that trinity. Mind, heart, guts. Head, heart, guts. If you don't have all three of those operating on all cylinders, firing on all cylinders, you're missing the most important part of the equation, which is courage and action. And that's why Crowley put so much into, when he did the Thoth deck, of emphasizing the courage or strength card. I'm not going to really get into that too much today, but I wanted to say this is Crowley's way of expressing the law of freedom. The absolute rule of the state shall be a function of the absolute liberty of each individual will. Will we truly understand the law of liberty, the law of freedom, and enact our true will through courage and right action? Not about just what we've come to know. You can know the totality of your prison. You know, like who I consider a mentor and someone who taught me so much was David Icke. He has a statement, a saying, what good is learning every single solitary detail of the prison that you're still in? What good is that? You can know the whole totality of the prison system. That's not going to help you get free. What's going to help you get free is right action, saying no, not cooperating with the enslavement methods, and doing what is going to be required to sacrifice of yourself and your own selfish will to then align your behavior with the will of creation by reaching out and teaching others. That's what's contained within this statement if you really know how to read it. And again, it dovetails perfectly with what I put out a few weeks ago, or re-put out and reworked a little bit to make it a little bit clearer. The real political spectrum, a function of consciousness and morality. Again, I put this graph, it's a function, meaning there's only one y value for every x value, okay? You can't draw it like this, okay? For every value on the horizontal axis, there's only one value on the vertical axis. That's what a function is mathematically, okay? And Crowley is actually saying this, that the rule of the state is a function of consciousness. It's a function of morality. It's a function of, are you going to align your will to the higher will? So I worded it here, the amount of consciousness, understanding of objective morality, and respect for self-ownership or sovereignty present in society. That's the vertical axis. And then the horizontal axis has its 0 point in the middle, and total control, that's the amount of external government based on coercion and violence. The 0 point is in the middle, meaning true freedom, no external control. And then the extremities going out from the middle are slavery, 100% total control, totalitarianism in the form of communism and fascism. Okay? But the whole thing that's being measured against is human consciousness. Is humanity unconscious and immoral in the aggregate? The bottom of the vertical axis. or are we enlightened and moral? Okay? And as we become more enlightened and moral, we have more freedom. That's a function of the rulership of the state. As we have less and less morality, and we are more and more unconscious of how the laws of nature and objective morality works, we go deeper and deeper into slavery and bondage as we are lower and lower on that function graph. It's a function. The function of the individual will to become enlightened and moral is a function that is absolutely correlated with the rulership of the state, the rulership of government. And then all you have to do is replace conscious and moral with, are you living the true will? Have you turned your individual lowercase will over to the higher level, capital W, will of creation itself? So living the true will versus living the selfish will. The function of the individual will is a measure of the rulership of the state. It's right there in the graph that I presented, and this is exactly what Crowley was saying. So I hope people understand that. I hope you gained a lot of value from this 3-part presentation. The last hour today will be devoted to your calls. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law. Love under will. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you gained a lot of value from that presentation on the occult philosophy of Thelema. Let's go over to your calls. I'm going to get set up for that. So let's put my 3D logo there. Come back down here and step out of the presentation. As a matter of fact, let's not do that. I'll leave that slide up unless I want to go somewhere else. So let's go back to that. Play that in full screen. And let's, well, I have to step out. I have to step out of it just to get the Discord call forward. So give me a moment. All right, let me get my headset. And we're going to go to your calls on the occult philosophy of Thelema. And I would like to keep it to the topic of Thelema, in keeping with the last 3 shows. Any questions, comments, or other points that you want to make regarding what we talked about over the last 3 weeks here is fair game. So let's see. Let's go to Gala. You're live on What on Earth is Happening. Welcome, Gala. How do you pronounce it? I am not hearing you. There you go.
Hello.
Welcome.
Gala. You said it right.
Welcome to the show. What do you have for us?
Can you hear me? Okay. Okay. I just wanted to point out, because you said stay on topic, but I'm trying to teach your I'm sorry, I'm trying to keep this on topic.
That's okay. Just, take your time.
The general principles of laws
Yes.
of nature, and I'm finding it very, very difficult.
Are you finding the concepts difficult yourself or teaching them to others?
I'm teaching girls, and it is... No. I've been following you for
Okay, so
15 years.
it's just
So
teaching
I
these
understand.
concepts to
Yes.
other individuals has proven challenging. Now, can I ask you what age the people that you are teaching are? Approximate age group?
Hold on, I've got an echo.
Yeah, the best way of
Can
I
you
can
hear
hear you. You're coming through fine. We're not getting an echo on my end. If you're getting an echo on your end, that's the reason that I recommend to use a headset of some type like this, so that things won't echo through your speakers and back into your mic. That's what usually creates echo and feedback. But if you just try to deal with it for the call, we'll get through it. If you could just tell me, what is the approximate age group? You said that these were girls. They were young women.
Oh, They're young. They're 28.
Well, that's not
to
that
30,
young. So
and
they're
they've
definitely
had.
adults and have been in physical adulthood for many years. Yeah.
Oh well,
Right.
I'm
Yeah,
older, so
I understand. But yeah,
yeah.
so they've gone through the indoctrination system. They have probably hardened, calcified worldview and belief systems.
Oh
Yes.
yes.
So
Oh
that's to be
yes.
expected. This is not out of the ordinary or usual what you are encountering. So it requires a lot of patience, and it requires saying the same thing over and over. One of the techniques I'm going to recommend to you, I can hear a little bit of frustration, regarding this, and that's normal. And don't feel bad about that or beat yourself up over that. That's absolutely what you're going to encounter, right? So, I recommend always asking them questions about themselves, about what they themselves say is true about them as people, right? So you have to appeal to an individual's own sense of their own morality. The first question that I usually ask anyone before even beginning any teaching is, do you yourself consider yourself a moral human being, or in other words, a good person? And then you have to inject questions about the philosophy of natural law into the framework that they've already said is true for them. Meaning, does that mean that you would agree that you do not have the right to perform acts of violence, to initiate acts of violence against other individuals, nor would a good person that you claim to be condone other people performing or initiating acts of violence upon other individuals? See, that sets up the contradiction that will come. And then if that contradiction is, if they are honest about it, right? See, so you're logically setting up, and you could even say this is part of Thelema, because you could do this in Thelemic philosophy as well. It's natural law. So you're setting up the individual, saying what they consider to be a truth about themselves, right? And then you're setting up their own internal contradiction. They have to do one of two things as you continue to unfold morality to them, right? You could then get into objective morality. You can get into rights. You can get into what people have the right to do and not do. You can get into the transgressions against morality. You can get into the inability to delegate a wrongdoing to someone else, because you don't have that right as an individual, so you can't give it to any others. And you could keep going down that path.
I do. I do a lot of.
Go ahead.
I do a lot of stuff that you've been talking about, and I think I'm getting through to one of them, but she got brutally beaten by her boyfriend. Left in a garbage can.
Oh my God.
So she's more willing to listen. Yeah,
and you
horrible.
see that now. That's actually very powerful.
She wouldn't.
It's very powerful what you just said. If I may take a moment, the person was willing to listen after suffering. Now, I don't wish suffering like that upon anybody, especially when it's violence committed by someone who has no right to enact violence like that, right? I don't want to see anything like that. The issue that I'm talking about here, which I've been talking about on former shows, is it seems that when we come into such a place of rigid, what I call satanic ego, that's not thinking, oh, I'm a big bad man, I'm going to be go over all against everybody. That's not what I'm talking about as ego. Ego is the force that says, I can't abandon my former worldview. I had to be right about that. I can't be wrong. I have an attachment to being right. And in point of fact, reality, the person actually is wrong, right? But they don't want to let go of the wrongness for some reason. They think that they're going to look stupid. They think that they're going to look played like a fool if they admit what I believed in isn't true, right? So again, what you're seeing is that individual who went through tremendous suffering, something disengaged while they were in that state of suffering. Perhaps they couldn't do all the things that they were doing before. So there was a time of relative quiet in the mind. And then if you continue to speak with them and present the truth, the mind is now in a different modality. It's not in the chatter all over the place that it was before, right? Now, a little bit of space has opened up because of trauma, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And this is what I say, that humanity's on that path, right? We're the ones who are going to get beaten viciously and left for dead, because we're not changing our worldview when it comes to violence and slavery. And therefore, the universe is going to come in and it's going to blast us with a right hook that's going to put us into what I call the way of maximum pain, right? Suffering can be a teacher. Suffering can make the mind quiet enough for a small amount of time such that you finally can hear what's been being said to you the whole time. And sadly, for your friend, that's probably what she went through. It's terrible to it have to be that way. And I'm not saying that's anything that had to happen. That's a willful choice on the part of a violent person to do that, Yes, go ahead.
I can see where her life is similar to what the world is going through. We're basically going to have to get our ass kicked, thrown in the garbage can, cut our throats, and whether we're going to fight for the right things now, or we're going to continue doing what put us in the garbage can. So,
That's right.
So I don't know if that's anything to laugh at.
I think this is a fantastic call. Thank you for relating that to me. I want to just briefly continue, and then you could close up the call with, I just want to say, set the individual up as part of your rhetoric, your exchange with them, for at some point in the future discussion with them of one of two things happen. They either have an aha moment and it clicks and they're like, whoa, that's actually what it means to do good and to be correct and to really understand rights. And then they'll acknowledge, I have not been doing that. I've been advocating for and condoning something that is other than that. And therefore, they'll understand the inherent immorality in government. And they'll understand natural law then. They'll have the very basis of an understanding of natural law. The second thing that can happen is the individual could attempt to double down and stay attached to the worldview and ideology that they're currently engaged in, which is advocating violence. But then they're set up for the contradiction where they have to lie, not only to themselves, but speak a lie aloud to the other person, and then acknowledge that their former statement about being a good person was a lie. They'll be forced, it's a dialectical path, right? You're deliberately setting them into a dialectic. And that's why I say dialectics do not necessarily have to be bad. They can be good teaching tools. It's when they become manipulatory toward a bad end goal. See, you're setting them up in a form of light manipulatory dialectic such that they only can come out two ways. They could acknowledge the truth, or they could double down on their wrongdoing, their wrongness of their worldview. But then ultimately what they have to say to themselves is, I agree that violence should be conducted upon people that don't really deserve violence conducted upon them. And to advocate for that, could you possibly, at the same time, truly be a moral individual? Or are you only making the claim to another person that you're a moral individual? And ultimately, if you're honest with yourself, that statement itself is a lie. And the person would have to live with that contradiction. You would basically say, well, we understand what you believe, where you're at. I can't force you to change, but what you should be fully aware of at a conscious level is that you made the statement you are a good person, and you said this is what's involved in being a good person, and then your actual behavior in life, your thoughts and your actions in life contradict what you said makes someone a good person. Therefore, you cannot truly, in point of fact, matter of reality, be a good person. You are only yourself making the claim that you are a good person. And then you leave it there, and they have to live with that contradiction on their mind, if they have any conscience whatsoever left in their consciousness. They'd have to live with that, understanding they're not really a good person. They're just making the claim that they're a good person. I think it's a powerful dialectical approach to natural law through a Socratic method of questioning the individual that you're trying to teach. That would be my advice. See where that goes. And again, you're going to push them into the dialectic of coming out on one side of that equation or the other. Hopefully that makes sense.
It makes sense. Thank you very much.
Great call. If you want to wrap up with anything, just feel free, go ahead, and then I'll go on to other callers.
No, I'll do some stuff later on order followers, since my son is an order follower, but he did some great things, and it's all because of your teachings, and we'll talk about that on another.
Gayla, thank you. Fantastic call. And I'll move on to another caller now. All right. And, folks, briefly, before I even go to another caller, I briefly want to show you something I neglected to show you. I want to show you how you can get these books of Thelema, or just any of Crowley's writings, or even books about Crowley and Thelema that you can read. Real quick, I'm going to step away from calls and show you this. I think it's that important that I really should do this. So let me go to my laptop full screen for about a minute or two. And I just want to show you let me close that definition of thrall there. I want to show you this site called Library Genesis. I believe I briefly may have showed people this in the past, but it really bears repeating. This is probably the biggest online library of books, of digital books in the world. It's called Library Genesis, and the website is libgen, the first three letters of each word, Library Genesis, libgen.is, the last two letters of Genesis. Okay, so libgen, libgen.is is the website. Now, let's just type in Holy Books of Thelema, and let's see if they have a digital edition of this. So, yes, it appears that they do have not only the Holy Books of Thelema, but a concordance to it that explains the encoding system, which is fantastic. Let's download both of these. One is in PDF format, the Holy Books of Thelema themselves, and one is, as you see here, EPUB, or electronic publication, which means it has flowing text. You can reflow the text, whereas with the PDF, it's a set layout. You cannot reflow the text. So, I'm simply going to click on the title of the book, not the author here, right? But the title. So let's open both of these. I'll open them in separate tabs. So I'll right click on this title and hit open in a new tab. And I will right click on this title and I will hit open link in a new tab. Now I'll go to one tab. The first tab has the Holy Books of Thelema themselves. This is the edition that I actually have. This is probably scanned from the paperback edition. My cover looks exactly like this, the one that I own physically. Okay, and then I'm just going to recommend that you pick one. So see this right here, right? This is a description up top here of what the book is. Okay, and you can read all about that. It's all information about it. Paperback, how many pages in the paperback, etc. The publisher, all of that stuff, right? Interesting to know, okay? But then this is the where the downloads happen. Mirrors, this word right here, mirrors, is just a piece of technical jargon that means download locations. It means places where the same file is hosted simultaneously. It's mirrored in all of these different locations. This mirror is libgen itself, their own server. Libgen.gs is another one. ZLibrary is another one. Then you can get it from a torrent file, Nutella protocol, eDonkey, which is ED2K, Direct Connect. These are ancient protocols. I don't really recommend them. Okay. This mirror almost always works. It's a rare thing when it doesn't. They've gotten probably a good content delivery network on Libgen. So I'm just going to click this one, right? The words "this mirror." Then it will take me to the download page, right? Then all you have to do is go up here to this little link here that says "Get" and hit that, and the book will begin to download. You see it downloading in my downloads here in the browser, right? So it's got more than half of it. It's got 2/3, 3/4, and now it's done. Now I can click this magnifying glass here to show the book in my Finder window. Okay, and here it is, The Holy Books of Thelema by Crowley. If I double click this, it will then open in your PDF reader. Hopefully you have one installed. The Mac comes with a built-in one. And you see it's fixed layout, right? No reflowing text. But this is the entire book. Okay, and you see it's scanned there, or at least those pages were. Now we have pretty good text layout here, okay? And you could read it like that. Now, one of the ways you could enhance this is, let's make it full screen. Now it put it in a 2-page layout, okay? So you could read it very similar to a book. And this is the whole text, all right? We could scan through it quickly. I could jump ahead. You know, let's take the bar and scroll way down. You can see there's some actual, half of the book is text and then half of the book is scans of the manuscript of these books. Or I think of the Book of the Law. But, this is the entire text of the, I believe, 5-volume set of the Holy Books of Thelema. Okay? It's that simple to get occult material. Right? You don't even need to go and buy the book if you don't want to. Okay? So, just go ahead and download things, right? So, let's download the addendum to it, or what was it called? They called it the concordance. So, this individual, Colin Campbell, wrote the concordance to the Holy Books of Thelema. All right? And I don't have this. I'm not versed in this. So, this could be something I may be highly interested in. So, it's an EPUB. Okay, so I'm going to hit this mirror, and we're going to download this one. So we would, and I show people how to do all of this stuff in How to Become the True Media. We go over all of this. This is part of what is known as exploring the dark web, and because this is considered a dark web website, meaning it's not indexed. Libgen.is. You cannot search for any of this content on a search engine. The search engines deliberately and willfully remove the domain from the websites, the domains that they are going to index for search, because they do not want people doing this. They don't want you going and downloading books and reading and becoming a Renaissance being because of what you know. They can't control and enslave people like that. You have to remain a stupid ignoramus for them to control and enslave you. So if you actually get into deep reading and eclectic occult philosophical reading, forget it. You're going to become enlightened, and then you can't be controlled, and their game is over. So I teach this in the seminar. I just wanted to, make people aware of that. You're going to hit Get here. That's going to download the EPUB. Okay, so here comes the EPUB. It's almost done. It's finished. Okay, now I could click the magnifying glass, and here is the EPUB. Okay, now if I double click this, it will not open in a PDF reader, but it will open in my default EPUB reader, which is Apple's Books program. Okay, and here is the book. I could then again make that full screen. It'll go into a 2-page layout, and I could just flip through the book like that. And there's the contents of the book, the foreword, and the whole book is in there. I could scan way ahead. You know, it's got photos in there and everything. And the nice part about this is you could change the size of the text. It's not fixed layout, right? I could also put this in dark mode, right? So it doesn't have a fixed layout. It's a changeable, manipulable layout. If I want the text larger, I can make it larger so the reading is easier on my eyes. That switched it to a one-page layout, one column. Okay, if I want it smaller to fit more text on each page, I can do that. I could put it in like sepia mode, or I could put it in grayscale, gray mode. I could change the font. If I don't like this font, I could pick another font that's more likable to me. So, you know, maybe I want Charter. And that's a minor difference, but, you know, I might want... There's a sans serif font called San Francisco. So there's a lot of customization you could do with an EPUB reader that isn't really possible to do with a PDF reader. So I'm going to keep it with Georgia with slightly larger text in dark mode. I like it like that. Okay? So that is how you can go and download any of the books that we talked about. Very easily, very quickly. All right? Just wanted to show people that for people who want to study further on their own. So I'm going to switch back over to Discord. Let me actually go over here and go back to the logo, and then I'll go back to my laptop and switch over to back over to Discord.